Hi, Lucy. Thanks for joining the Piscari Industry Insights session. I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, no problem at all. It's a pleasure to be here. I know that we met some time ago at one of the agency events, and it's great to be here as well to share some of my thoughts.
Perfect. And this is very relevant to all of my audience that are agency leaders, also the marketing procurement people that buy agency services. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion. We've got kind of three topics that we said we'd discuss. So let's start with the kind of the first question about, in the last kind of 3 to 5 years, have you seen any shifts in the way that business development's being done by agencies? Kind of what's been working and what hasn't, what's changed?
Yeah, I mean, I have noticed, which is brilliant, that agencies are realizing that they can't just rely on investing in a new business function, whether that's internally or externally, that they really need to support all of their new business activity with marketing. So with content, entering awards, running events, going out and networking, and not just relying on the outbound kind of lead generations activity that agencies have traditionally done. But interesting as well, you know, I think this started maybe more than 3 years ago. There was a trend for some agencies to start offering an in-house service. So similar to kind of what Oliver do, where their whole offer is in-house. There are other agencies like Conrad Design Group who have built in-house teams at clients. And really timely, actually, with this call, I just read on one of the kind of news articles that came through on my email that there's a company, and I hadn't actually come across it before, called Inc. and Co. So INC and Co. They're actually Manchester-based group, and they're opening a London outpost, a London office. But they are a marketing kind of collective of agencies that are buying brands. So it's really interesting. So wow. they own, or they've just recently bought the Chopped hospitality brand, and right. The Nomo, I think it's pronounced Nomo, the Nomo kind of accessories and luxury leisure kind of laptops type bag brands. So that's quite interesting that they recognize that a lot of brands are bringing marketing services in-house.
Exactly.
And maybe there's an opportunity to kind of combine that all together. So that's some of the things that I've noticed over the last couple of years. But I think there's a long way to go in terms of agencies really kind of stepping up their new business and marketing efforts, because it's so competitive.
Absolutely.
And agencies do need to work so much harder to get through to people.
I mean, something I'm noticing as well is that just in terms of, all kind of my outbound activities, working with the agencies that I work with, same thing is that clients on the receiving end, they're saying that up to 60% of the research is done way before anyone talks to any salesperson. So a straight outbound activity just isn't, the conversion rates are going down. So there has to be other things that you do.
Yes, that's true. I mean, the recent report, I always read it every year, the Up to the Light report by Jonathan Kirk that he does, which is called What Clients Think report. Right. And every year, the stat is quite high that where clients say they want they want to find agencies rather than be sold to. It used to be around 70%. And it's now gone up into the 80s, which is kind of no surprise, because actually none of us like to be sold to. So, if we're going to get asked that question about anything we're going to buy, whether it's a car or a house or a handbag, we're always going to say that you'd rather find those brands yourself than be sold to.
Exactly.
But it's true. I think that, whenever I've got any of our agency clients onto pitches, or whether they've been unsuccessful in getting onto pitches, I always ask those questions, how did you pull together that shortlist of agencies? Yes. And often it's like, I asked around the office, I asked my team who they'd worked with before, I asked people that I knew who they'd recommend. I had to look at agency awards, and awards can be quite high on the list. And then sometimes they might have a rank outsider who has impressed them with outbound activity. I mean, outbound activity definitely does work. Yes. And we've seen great success. Yeah, exactly. But you've got to support it with doing great work for your clients, showing, promoting and shouting about that great work, and then also adding loads of value in some of your thought leadership and content, and just getting out there as well. Networking, obviously face-to-face networking is not happening, but there are opportunities to network on LinkedIn, on social media. Building your profile as an agency CEO on LinkedIn can work well as well.
So just talk to me about LinkedIn, Lucy, because I think, I mean, we're obviously both on there a lot. You pick up everything that's being said by agencies as well. And there seems to be like, some people are saying, oh, it's turning into Facebook. LinkedIn are talking about monetizing content by having adverts wrapped around it that are programmatic. Whether that'll happen or not, don't know. So is it becoming a place where you truly do put your thought leadership and you do start to get people that follow you for your trusted advisor status, or do you think actually it's not what it was? What's your view on that?
Yeah. Do you know what when was it, last month? And I was really active, intentionally active on social media, on Instagram and on LinkedIn, sharing a mix of all different types of content, from real kind of what I thought was real value, thought leadership, how-to stuff as well, for agencies, and then mixing it in with a little bit of personal stuff, a little bit of, this is about me and me going sea swimming, or me sharing a snippet of news that might be funny. And, the posts that actually got the most engagement, the most comments, the most likes were the more personal stuff, right? Which is really annoying because you put time and effort into the value-based stuff. But do you know what? I think that definitely agencies need to be writing thought leadership content, because that's going to really help with their SEO, going to help rank them on Google. And the ways that you can do it is by, it doesn't have to be lots of different pieces of content. It could just be one really juicy piece of content that you write each month. That could be, or it could be recorded, a podcast, but then you can transcribe it, you can put it on your blog post, on your agency website, you can then put it as an article or break it down into snippets on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. But the thing about LinkedIn now, like other platforms, is that in order for you to get views on your content, you need to be really active in there. You need to be engaging on other people's content. Otherwise, you don't get many views on your own. And that just takes a lot of time. I mean, I struggle to find the time to do everything that I want to do on those platforms. And I get that with agency owners. It can take a lot of time.
But I think you're right on that. The second piece is there's a number of people on LinkedIn that I follow that are LinkedIn kind of trainers and strategists. And and I've started doing the same thing, which is if someone posts something and that person is someone that I want to eventually engage with in some way, shape or form, writing a meaningful comment on their post that's more than just, gee, thanks, or awesome. It takes time, but it definitely has an impact.
Yeah, like it's contributing to the conversation.
Exactly.
And then they're likely to connect with you or accept your connection request. But not only that, they'll remember you and kind of look you up and think, oh, who is this person? Whereas I get so many connection requests, and rightly or wrongly, I pretty much accept all of them. My view to accept all of them is because the nature of my work is to find lots of contact names.
Yes, exactly.
For my clients, and so LinkedIn is great for that. And the more I can expand my network, the better. But I think that the damage that you do in accepting any random connection request is that your newsfeed is not quite so relevant as you want it to be.
Yeah, because you've got this fragmentation.
Of audiences as targeted.
Audience.
Yeah. So if I was an agency owner and I was just interested in perhaps building the profile of my own agency, then I would be more selective over who I connected with.
Yeah, no, that's very good advice, definitely. So in the last 12 months, given what's been going on, have you seen anything really innovative that agencies have done or that you've done that's made a difference to business development?
I wish. I wish I had seen more innovative stuff. I was when I saw that question, I was thinking, there's definitely been a lot more use of different tech platforms. So much more use of automation, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So used well, where you're sharing again value and you're trying to kind of move people from the top of the funnel down and move them along that kind of buyer journey. It can work really, really well. But for me as well, a lot of it is just a little bit of trial and error and testing things and seeing what messages work, testing different messages to different audiences at different times of day. And really interesting, as an example, my best campaign that I sent out last year was like a really small list. So I think it was about I've got the figures here, 28 people.
Okay.
I sent it late on a Friday afternoon, which is
everyone says you shouldn't do.
No,
exactly, that's right.
Definitely
yes.
don't do that. But do you know what? It depends who your audience is.
Yeah.
Because my audience was founders and CEOs of like tech startups, ones with funding, and these people are ones who are going through fundraising rounds. These people don't work 9 to 5.
No.
You know, and actually now we're all working much more fluidly. The traditional times of when open rates are going to be more successful are very different. And I got 100% open rate on that. And I got like 6 responses and 2 meetings. And that was just a really small targeted campaign of 28 people.
Was that, just out of interest, was that on LinkedIn? So did you direct message people?
No, I don't. I very rarely use LinkedIn for outreach because
Really?
I just think it's getting quite spammy. There's lots of automation. So I use email automated tool platforms. So I use one.
So good old fashioned email.
Yeah, but you can use sequence ones because there's there's lots of stats to show that people will respond to the 3rd or 4th or 5th email in a sequence rather than the 1st or 2nd. So I use a platform. There's 2 that I've used called reply.io and apollo.io.
Yeah.
But agencies as well are doing a lot of webinars.
So webinars. So what's your view on webinars?
Do you know what? I was hoping to have seen things that might, I do sign up to webinars and try and listen into quite a few just to get some inspiration and ideas. I haven't seen anything yet that's kind of really pushing boundaries or that's really innovative. And I think the problem with webinars is that there's so many, people register all the time for them, but then they either don't show up or they do show up and they're not really engaged, they're not really listening. And the ways that I've used different tools to get people to show up to webinars is I used a platform called Bonjoro where you can send personalized video messages. It's brilliant. It's a really quick video message. You just treat some people don't like being on video. I don't particularly like being on video, but I just think of it as like a voice message.
Yeah.
So when someone registers to my webinar, I use the Bonjoro. Hi, Mike, how you doing? Super excited that you're coming to our webinar. It's tomorrow. Don't miss out. If you show up live, you'll get this, or, there'll be something quite interesting for you. And that is a really good way to get people to show up because that's the most important thing. You don't really want people listening into recordings that will never really happen.
Exactly. And also evergreen webinars. If anyone out there is thinking of doing them, don't do them. Don't do evergreen webinars. Disaster. No,
they're just not, they're not going to work. And actually with webinars, again, before the pandemic, we used to run events for agencies. And the most successful events are those where they're quite small, where you can have a proper engaging conversation and discussion, and where you've ideally got clients or external speakers as the draw, because actually brand directors, digital directors, heads of marketing, they don't just want to hear from agencies, they love to hear from their peers as well and their competitors.
Interesting that this kind of this Insights series that I've done on video was a suggestion from a friend of mine. And it was exactly that. It was like, I want to interview interesting people that have got an insight into an area of marketing in its broadest sense. And then I can use that content to talk to my audience. And because it's got guests on it, and they're thematic, each got a small theme, it's more likely to get more engagement.
Yeah, and also it's easier. It's easier for you. It's hard for especially a lot of agency owners don't always like talking about themselves or coming up with their own content. Whereas if it's an interview style thing, it's so much easier. But it's a great way to develop relationships with prospects. So if you're running a series of interviews with your ideal prospect, then they're much more likely to come back to you and have a conversation with you about, oh yes, I am happy to share some of my thoughts and opinions with you on your platform, or oh no, I'm not, rather than respond to a sales message. So that in that way it works well as well.
Yeah, when I ran this campaign, so I ran a campaign of just 200 people that I knew would have an opinion on something. It's not a business development campaign at all. It was the opposite. It's an insights campaign.
Yes, yeah.
I got a 15% response rate to having a call, because it's just about, I want to prepare some questions, ask something interesting and meaningful, have you respond, and then I edit it and give it back to you.
Exactly.
And some people have said, why are you doing that? What's in it for you? And I said, it's part of my content strategy. It's part of my content strategy for this year. I post that on YouTube. It builds up my YouTube credibility. It gives me easy content to put onto LinkedIn that's meaningful.
But also, interestingly, that question is, what's in it for me?
Yes.
We need to stop thinking about what's in it for me. We need to start thinking about what's in it for my target audience, what's in it for my clients.
Exactly.
And even for my existing clients, or for your existing clients or agencies' existing clients, how can you help them better beyond just doing the job that they're paying you to do? How can you make them feel kind of loved and cherished and cared for, and that you're adding value? And that's a really good way, is by pushing out some of that content.
And what's your view? So just talk about the email automation platforms, and it's very interesting. So I use ConvertKit, very similar. And so why is that? How can you use that effectively? Because the automated sequences can be a bit spammy if they're not careful. So how do you craft the sequence to make sure it's engaging? What recommendations would you have?
Yeah, I mean, I've read up a lot of these and tried a lot of different tests and stuff. And so, ideally you want to put in a few different fields to make it look less like it's automated. Right. The challenge is that you do have to obviously have an unsubscribe option. So yes, that of course can make it look more, but you can use it in a quirky way. But yeah, you can add in fields like, obviously, the obvious ones are like the brand or the company name or the domain name, but you can maybe even add a bit more of a long tail key phrase that might be, so you do a bit of research. So you can only do this on smaller lists, but you can still use the automated platform to make sure those follow-up messages are going out. So it could be that you research their last agency pitch or a recent brand campaign, or so you could have the first sentence could be, I know or I understand you're working with, whatever agency, and you can have that as one of your kind of fields when you're importing it into the automated platform.
And can you automate that piece? So it does you put the field in and then it fills the field?
Yes, wow. Yeah, you can use that as a different kind of tag. I don't know what they call them, liquid field. Is it tag field or something like that?
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and then people say that you can, the platform that I use, which is called Apollo, that's quite clever, as in that it will pick up what day of the week that you're sending the email out at, because obviously they're not all going out at once because they stagger it. So, but it'll pick it up and it will put in that field. It will say, hope you're having a nice Friday afternoon. And that makes it look a little bit less. I did hear that I heard a little trick from, I think it was Andrew at Kulia on one of his podcast interviews. And he was saying that you can have in your email signature, instead of like your whole email signature, Lucy at Cherry, whatever, you can just have Lucy and then in back, underneath, like sent from my iPhone.
Oh, right.
So
yeah.
That looks, you have that as your signature, but I've not tried that. I don't know if that's for me. I don't know if I like to be honest and open and transparent. And so there's something about that makes you feel a little bit not sure, but.
Well, the same here. It's like,
interesting.
Acting with integrity.
Yeah.
And if it is like automated email sequences that are content-based sequences.
Yes.
So again, I'm looking at doing a series of, 5 emails with negotiation tips in each one.
Yeah.
And again, that's, people like the single tip, single idea, something they can action. And email sequences are great for that.
Yeah. I get definitely sharing value at each step of the way. But I get most responses from an email that I send where I will have the initial email that leads with value, and it's forwarded on with a really short note just saying something like, trying to get hold of you. Is there a good time to reach you? Of course, if it's not right, let me know. And I get much more responses from that one.
Right. Interesting. But email's definitely very much alive.
It has to be, because there's no other way to contact people.
That's right.
Which is annoying, but it's quite, we do use the phone. I phone up, I follow up on all the emails that I send out, but so many aren't able to, especially with bigger brands and organizations, they're not able to transfer calls. Smaller ones, they tend to have, the phone diverted to someone, but we're just not,
we're just not picking up phones anymore as much as we used to.
No. And I think that kind of happened a bit before the pandemic, whereas, people would have their direct line and wouldn't really give it out to people.
Exactly.
And actually, if we do think about, I don't want to show my age here, but if you do think about the younger generation, they don't really make as many phone calls. They're much used to kind of WhatsApp messages.
Exactly.
And DMs and stuff, and email.
So going forward, the next kind of 12 months, kind of what do you think are the challenges that agencies are going to face with their kind of new business pipeline, selling, closing deals, negotiating deals? What do you think is going to happen?
I think the biggest challenge really is going to be planning ahead. I don't know if you've heard this from some of the, brands and agencies that you work with, but, obviously at the moment we're living in such a unstable world that brands can't plan ahead. And that's another thing that they're saying, is that they are trying to juggle this, or trying to kind of balance this act of being reactive, being short-termist, being able to be agile and adapt to what their audience wants, brands. But then they're having to forego some of the longer-term brand building strategy pieces that they should be doing. And, is there any point in kind of planning out a year-long marketing campaign, knowing that we don't know what's going to happen in two weeks' time? So agencies need to demonstrate that they can work in that really super flexible way. But, that is going to make it much harder for agencies to plan ahead, because even before it was all project-led, and now it's just going to be even more so.
I mean, I think definitely concur, seeing a shift there has been a shift over the last probably 2 or 3 years, actually, from brand marketing into performance-based marketing. Yeah. Much more of a focus on ROI.
Yes, definitely.
It's the obvious conversation to have. The problem is that leads you down the path of, direct email marketing, direct response marketing, anything, Facebook ads, Google ads, whatever it might be.
Stuff that can be measured.
But at the expense of brand awareness. I went to a conference 3 years ago called ProcureCon, which was the marketing procurement people from the world's biggest brands at one conference. And they were talking, in some depth about their concern, and they were buying we're buying more and more performance marketing, and we're buying less and less brand marketing. And that's dangerous, because eventually there'll be brand equity erosion.
Yes,
that
of course,
balance is going to get even worse, I think, in the next 12 months.
Yeah, so agencies need to work out a way how they can kind of measure that brand equity. I mean, it has been, obviously it's been measured in the past by accountants and, sometimes appeared on the books. But that needs to really kind of play a part. And I think as well, there's so many agencies, they just are too afraid to kind of step up to that performance measurement reviews. And that needs to be periodic. So it needs to be when you start working on a brand, whether, even if it's not something that's quite so measurable like digital marketing. Yeah. But think about, okay, what are the actual, KPIs that we're trying to achieve, and throughout the even if it's just some performance measurement around kind of how they're working as a team or anything like that. But then throughout the project, kind of really go back and review those along the way.
I mean, if you look at me as a buyer in my procurement role, I can buy activity, I can buy outputs, I can buy outcomes. I have no interest in buying activities. I'm just paying someone to spend more time. I'll buy outputs and I'll buy outcomes. And I'll blend the agency's fees around, there's a bit for the deliverable, there's a base fee, and then there's a performance fee on top, which may or may not be capped. But agencies have to get into that mindset of, I need results.
And agencies don't, their margins are quite low. They need to work out how to kind of make better margins on the work that they're doing.
They do, and that's because part of the reason is, so I wrote, do you know I write an article for The Drum?
Yes,
So it's now called Ask the Negotiator, and each month I write something from a kind of a buyer's perspective as a negotiator, and that scope creep and negotiating the scope of the project. My next one this month's about scope creep, and one of the reasons that the margins are so bad often within agencies is, at the point when I'm negotiating the contract, if you were the agency owner, I think you would get probably an excellent margin in your piece of work, because you're very commercial, you understand how to negotiate, you've been around the agency world a long time. But some of the agencies that are less experienced, when they meet professional buyers, all of that margin gets taken out, because I want more for less, and I want you to go on more risk, and I want more penalties, and you're in this kind of losing game if you're not careful.
Yeah, that's when they need your training.
That's when they need my training.
But it is, I've heard from you and also from other people to say, okay, well, when it comes to the time of negotiation, you have to make sure you have it to start with in your pricing options, that there's ways that they can go, okay, we get that you've got to reduce the price. So how can we reduce what we're putting in? Are there any areas that you can do yourself or your internal team so we don't have those, to reduce those costs? And maybe look at doing, anchor-based pricing and different pricing options as well.
Exactly right. Lucy, it's been fascinating, and thank you for all your insights.
Thank you so
it's been really,
much.
really good. Thank you. And where can people find out more about you? So where can they find out more about you?
Probably LinkedIn best, which is Lucy Snell, SN for November, ELL. And then our company website. So we work with agencies to help them get new clients. That's cherrybusinessconsulting.com.
Brilliant. Lucy, thank you ever so much. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
No worries. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Mike.